Welcome to Beerfield Fantasy Football. I am your host, Ad Hot BFF, with two B's, coming to you from the state of Missouri, or Missouri, or something. As always, joined by Marquise Brown Drop and my co-host Dan Thury. Dan?
At Thury
BFF with two F's. Dan.
I'm good.
Dan.
I'm good. I'm slightly stressing out about this, fantasy football, heat of the season, playoff positions are on the line, playoffs are on the line, and, tilting a little bit. It's on the line, given certain players doing certain things. But, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm a little not thrilled by some things. We'll get into that in a minute. But welcome to Week 12. We got some check-ins on a Willie Snead touchdown. We got some check-ins on your two wide receivers. We got Monday Night Football going on in the background here. We got waivers, cuts, injury check-ins, all of the talk about Mason Rudolph and Andy Dalton and all of those fun things. But before we get into that, first off, you can follow the show, Beerfield Fantasy Football, YouTube, Facebook, Beerfield FF on Twitter. And yeah, let's get into... as far as the competition goes this week, forgot to mention that. You are likely going to win. As in will win by 1. So, or maybe 3. It just depends. So, still some things undecided, but... if things hold, it's the opposite of last week. It wasn't ugly. I think you got 8 out of a possible 11, and I got 7 out of a possible 11. So, pretty good.
I mean, we had a good week overall.
Yeah, we did.
Which I don't care about winning or losing more so than I do, but even more so than us being both really good. That means our listeners hopefully did good. So
yes, it does. We hope. Before we get into the bulk of the episode, though, let's get into what is fueling Beerfield today.
What's fueling Beerfield?
All right, Dan, what do you got?
I got Prairie. It's called Screenshot. Prairie is the brewery. Prairie is out of Oklahoma. They're really known for their what's called Prairie or Prairie Bomb. It's a series of imperial stouts. This one's an imperial stout with hazelnut coffee added to it. I'm super excited to try it. It was the last one we had in the store, so I will let you guys know what I think about this later.
All right, and anybody that's been listening to the show for any period of time already knows what I'm going to think about this. I am paying off last week's punishment, so I have my original hate for lime beers, Bud Light Lime from Anheuser-Busch here in St. Louis. So ooh. I will let you know if my opinion has changed on it any in the last 10 years or so.
That sounds good.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the news. All right, kicking it off, more so because it's hilarious than relevant, the Eagles have waived wide receiver Jordan Matthews. It's like you keep going back to that X, thinking it's going to work out again, and then it doesn't work out. In all seriousness,
it's not going to work out, ever. What do you mean?
In all seriousness, this means either Nelson Aguilar, Alshon Jeffrey, or both are looking at being back next week.
They need something there. That offense is uncharacteristically predictable.
Yep. Speaking of things that are returning, Chase Edmonds is going to return for the Cardinals this week. When asked, Cliff Kingsbury said that the Cardinals are definitely going to be trying to get all 3 backs involved. David Johnson, you got to figure, is going to be a bit less banged up coming off the bye week and after about 2 weeks of no usage. They weren't calling it injury related, but he definitely looked slow and sluggish and wasn't quite right. So we'll see how that goes. Kenyon Drake has been very, very good, so I think he's at least guaranteed X amount of touches to where he should still be flex relevant. But the other two, I don't know that this close to the playoffs that I'm willing to gamble unless it's plus matchup. I absolutely need a win, and then maybe David Johnson, but no guarantees with him. And I don't know that I want to put my season on how that's gone. What are your feelings on this backfield?
I would drop everybody that's not Kenyon Drake. I mean, we are 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks away from most, if not all, fantasy playoffs. David Johnson hasn't been anything to you for the past 5 or 6 weeks. They traded for Kenyon Drake. As you just said, he's been very much passable as a flex-worthy running back. You throw in a healthy Chase Edmonds. The Cardinals have stated through social media they don't give two shits about your fantasy roster. Yes, that doesn't always correlate to actual production on the field. To me, David Johnson is just a guy who's being treated as if he's as because he's done it before, as someone that, okay, I'm not sure if I should drop him or not. He's not doing it this year. There's
No.
You can drop him, have him use the name cache, have somebody else pick him up and deal with the headache. There's absolutely no reason, unless something happens to both Edmonds and Drake. There's absolutely no reason to have David Johnson rostered at this point.
Nope, no reason whatsoever to have David Johnson rostered. We said a couple weeks back, drop him. I dropped him in a league. You just can't keep riding that, not at this point of the year. He hasn't helped you get anywhere. If you have Kenyon Drake and somebody did drop David Johnson, then you can handcuff if you want. But
yes, that's fine.
Which is, we'll get to that here in a little bit, is a strategy. Zach Taylor's confirmed Andy Dalton's going to start week 13 against the Jets. So this is actually good news if you own Bengals pieces.
After it was like a week after confirming that he will not go back to Andy Dalton, and they'll stick with Ryan Finley. Things have changed.
Ryan Finley was never the answer. I think they were trying to salvage something
not.
that's not going to be salvaged. He was never the answer. He wasn't the future, despite what you wanted to believe off of one preseason or whatever their draft hype was. We never necessarily saw it in Ryan Finley. He didn't come out and show or give any hope. Granted, not a lot of pieces around him either, but yeah, Andy Dalton wasn't setting the world on fire, but he definitely was a clear upgrade over Ryan Finley. So he's going to go in. AJ Green, I'm still going to contend, will not play it down for this team this year. And, it's just good news from Mixon and then maybe Auden Tate and Tyler Boyd.
I would hope so.
Tyler Boyd was getting a shitload of targets with Dalton. Thing.
I agree with Boyd. My not sure is on Mixon. More so the fact that Mixon's produced only with Brian Finley. And that shouldn't make a difference, because if they're going to ride Mixon, it doesn't matter who their quarterback is. I guess it's to me is you're doing this because you want to build up team morale and not be clear cut that you want to lose every game this year. Because if you want to lose every game, Ryan Finley's the answer at that point, and they should be playing for the number one spot. Even though with Washington winning, there's no other team that should compete with them there. Yep. So Dalton gives you a chance to win. Like if Dalton was their quarterback on Sunday, they would have beaten Pittsburgh, I think.
I think they would have too, especially as crappy as Mason Rudolph played, and the fact that they had to go to Duck Hodges in order to get that win, which good transition here, I guess, even though it wasn't the next thing on my list. But Mike Tomlin is not yet committed to Duck Hodges as a starter, but, quote, is weighing his options. I think it's Devlin Hodges. I think that Mason Rudolph has hit a rough patch. He hasn't been good here lately. You're still a team that's on the fringe of playoff contention. You've won. You turned to Duck Hodges to win you the game last week. You won his only other start. He does some things that Mason Rudolph can't with his legs, and the wide receivers have not exactly been great. I think that you kind of got to let Devlin Hodges take the reins here and do something different than what Mason Rudolph was giving you here recently.
I completely agree. There's I don't have their record in front of me, though. I don't think they're a playoff team, but what was I trying to say? You can't and they get the Browns back. Horrible bad blood, obviously horrible bad blood between him and the Browns and Mason Rudolph. I don't think Hodges is the answer overall, but like you said, I think playing him they sparked the offense a little bit. So there's got to be something there. There's no reason to go back to Mason Rudolph.
No, there's not. So expect Devlin Hodges there. If you're in a super flex league where quarterbacks are necessary, then Devlin Hodges may be there for the picking. I say that because I am in some very barren super flex leagues, and you just hope for the next quarterback up that might be on waivers there.
Oh, you got to pick him up. You got to roster him in super
Same
flex.
Thing goes for Andy Dalton.
Super slates. Yeah, same thing. Which just sucks because in Scott Fishbowl, I had to pick between Dalton and Minshew, who I wanted to drop for tight end because both of mine were on bye. and I went with Dalton.
Yeah.
I thought for sure that Minshew would get that job back before.
Well, I was writing Andy Dalton and Gardner Minshew to the borderline playoff contention in our listener Superflex Dynasty League.
Yeah.
And then I lost them both in the same week.
Well, I'm glad you got him back.
And then I went to tanking, and now it's just going to be harder to tank. It's one of those, I didn't commit one way or the other, and I'm going to end up with a mid-round draft pick. That's what happens when you have commitment problems. Says the married guy. All right.
Very much so.
Miami coach Brian Flores stated Kalen Ballage will continue to start for the Dolphins.
I mean, they should want to lose. They should commit to Josh Rosen, Kalen Ballage, and whatever the fuck else.
My thoughts on Kalen Ballage getting more touches. He's been terrible. Here's the thing, right? We always talk about you got to see what you have. They do not have. And yes, Kalen Ballage, Patrick Laird, Myles Gaskin kind of getting more looks. I think at this point, 2 years in, you kind of know what you got in Kalen Ballage with a line that can't
easily,
block.
Yes.
I think that you sat on your 7th round pick in Myles Gaskin for this long and a UDFA and Patrick Laird. I think you got to look and see more what you have in those two because you already know what you haven't gotten out of Kalen Ballage. I think you got to give them more looks and see what you have there as you try to build this roster for the future and see what pieces you want to hold on to and want to cut bait with.
It's shocking to me that they haven't at least given Myles Gaskin more run. Like, granted, 7th round pick as well. We liked him a lot more than we liked, Kalen Ballage. And
well, he was good in space too. He had decent vision and was shifty. Ballage is none of those things. He's just fast.
Ballage is just a big body with, he's basically the blind man's David Johnson. Like he's all strength and he's got speed.
Yeah,
that's just about it.
No vision to use it.
Yeah, he can't see through anything.
I'm gonna accidentally win again because we're doing the RG3 Gus Edwards for the last quarter thing.
I'm gonna lose because I'm playing against Gus Edwards.
All right. Mike Tomlin has not yet committed. I already said that. We jumped ahead here. The Broncos have yet to make a decision on whether to activate Drew Lock from IR despite Brandon Allen's abysmal performance. Completed just under 50% of his passes again for under 100 yards and 1 interception this week. I'm really putting this in here so I can shit on Brandon Allen some more because that's something I like doing as of late. But as far as Drew Lock goes, again, same thing. He's had all season to kind of sit and watch and learn the playbook or whatever. Why not get him some development starts in what's a lost season and get him out there and get him acclimated to the game and hopefully get a jump start on next season with him as long as he's healthy enough and good to go. It's not going to be any worse than Brandon Allen.
Oh, no. And it's like, and it's just, just what you just said. It's London C's completely healthy. Like, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Brandon Allen's not your future.
No.
He's barely getting by with the present.
And you drafted Drew Lock to be your future.
Yeah, I mean, 2nd round pick. I get it with the quarterback class coming up and with their record, they could have a chance to get one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. But you gotta have to see what you have in the 2nd round pick. And if he's ready to go, like we should see him this year at some point. Especially if the Broncos want to draft another quarterback, I would think we would see some sort of game time action from Locke as long as he's healthy.
Yep. By the way, final stat line tonight on Lamar Jackson, 15 to 20, 168 yards, I think it was, 5 touchdowns and 95 rush yards.
Yeah, it's insane. And they just won't punt. That's the best thing. They went for it on 4th and 1 from their own 40, like 5 or 46. Didn't fucking care.
Up 42 to 6.
Yeah, up 42 to 6. I ain't fucking punting it. Granted, they want to get the game over with as much as possible, so I do appreciate that. But let the Rams get back on offense. I need a couple more sacks.
I need some Cooper Kupp points.
Yeah, right.
All right. Doug Marrone, quote, hasn't considered a quarterback change after the Jaguars were stomped by Tennessee. Foles, another rough day, 32 of 48 passing, 272 scoreless yards, most of that in garbage time as the Jags were down big. For comparison's sake, Gardner Minshew, 20 of 30 for 204 and 2 against the Titans. Now, you could make the argument that this wasn't necessarily on Foles. This was on more so the defense than anything. But Foles wasn't doing any favors in the keep-up game against a defense that had really been struggling lately.
So I will say this. if the Jaguars' intentions is to trade Minshew, I think most people have already seen enough from Minshew to know where teams. Speaking of the NFL, to know what his value is. If you want to throw him out there, even though the season's lost, there is risk of injury, and then that obviously tanks the value. Now I'm going tinfoil here. I don't think that's the case, but if there is a way to spin it, it's that way. Is that they want to protect this and be able to move him for quote unquote max value,
or other way around? Maybe are they showing off Nick Foles in hopes of making a trade?
Very much true, and that's the other way. Because at this point, Nick Foles isn't your career quarterback. You're just trying to save face as a franchise for giving him a contract that everyone knew in the entire fucking world that it was way too much money.
Yep, you gave Nick Foles a ton of money. He's not been good for the last 2 weeks. You've kind of by trading away Jalen Ramsey said, hey, we know we're going to have to rebuild. You got some nice young pieces with you. You may waste Fournette's prime here a little bit. He's only 3 years in, though. But
he's not re-signing with this team.
I don't think he will, not in the way that it is.
Year 5. He might even hold out in year 4, the same way Zeke did.
He may. But you got DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook. You got some nice pieces at wide receiver. You're probably one guy away there. The offensive line has not been terrible, especially in the run game. So you got some pieces to build around, but you need to do a retool, and I don't know that Nick Foles is the one you want doing that. So if you can get out of that bad contract via trade or something, then for somebody that might need a bridge guy, then why not show him off?
It wouldn't surprise me if both their ways is the way. Like, as much as I love Minshew, I don't know if he's the future in Jacksonville, especially if Jacksonville keeps losing and they get a high draft pick. They may go with one of these quarterbacks, but
yeah.
All
right, let's go ahead and hit some hangovers real quick, talk some injuries.
Hangovers.
All right, hangovers. Kind of a shorter segment this week. Is I think most of the league is getting healthy here down the stretch run, versus in the middle of the season when everyone's banged up, or we're just kind of resigning the fact some people are out for the year and some people aren't relevant anymore. Something to keep an eye on, though. Estimated injury report for the Lions. Matthew Stafford was listed as did not practice, and Jeff Driscoll is limited with a shoulder injury. So keep an eye on that situation if neither one of them can go.
Jesus, they need to shut down Stafford and let the season go.
3-6-1. You need to shut down Stafford. You just ride Driscoll the rest of the year. If he can't go, I don't know who the backup is now.
They'll probably sign somebody. I don't know. I don't care.
Yep. Colts running back Marlon Mack is not going to play in Week 13 as expected with his broken hand, while Paris Campbell has a chance to return. So, haven't seen a lot out of Paris Campbell this year, though.
He's flashed, kind of.
Yeah. He's been hurt
he's
most
barely
of the
played.
season.
He's barely played.
Yep. Austin Hooper and Julio Jones both listed as did not practice on the Falcons' estimated injury report. Devonta Freeman was listed as limited. The reason that Austin Hooper and Julio Jones news is important. One, Hooper was trending towards coming back, but the Falcons play Thursday night. So the Falcons play on Thanksgiving, which means you may not see Julio this week either, given that it's a quick turnaround.
Yeah, who they get the Sunday night game under? I forget. The Saints, right? Who they get?
Yeah, they have a Thursday during the day game against the Saints, I think. Or maybe it's Thursday night. I don't know. They're one of the
It'd be Thursday night because it'll be Lions, Cowboys, and whatever Sunday night they pick. So
yeah, because the Lions have the Bears, I think, at noon.
Yeah, Lions, Bears, I think it's at 11, and then Cowboys, Bills at 3:00, whatever, and then yeah. So have contingency plans, and if Marshawn Lattimore can't go,
Calvin Ridley.
Love Calvin Ridley
all day, and Lattimore was estimated as limited with a hamstring.
Okay.
Hunter Renfrow broke a rib and punctured a lung on Sunday, and I believe he played through it.
Jesus, what a boss!
He is a boss.
What a beast.
Andy Reid, Renfrow, by the way, I've kind of been touting him as your Adam Humphries type of consistency option, but I don't know how long he'll be out with a punctured lung. My assumption is a little bit.
I don't think he plays again this season.
I don't think he does either.
That's my hot take.
Yeah. So good news for Darren Waller owners.
Yeah. Right.
Andy Reid stated he's quote optimistic about Tyreek Hill's availability this week against the Raiders. He also confirmed that LaShawn McCoy is not in the league's concussion protocol and, in fact, avoided it altogether after exiting a Monday night game. So LaShawn McCoy apparently regenerates brains, too, not just knees.
He is the fucking Wolverine of all things.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Apparently he's fine. Things that aren't surprising somehow.
Right.
Jordan Howard still considered day-to-day with a shoulder injury. Keep an eye on that. You did see some Josh Adams last week. Still not much J.I. What?
You saw it. They still have.
Oh, not Josh Adams. Sorry, that was a different box score entirely. That was the Jets.
Okay, I was like,
I don't know what the hell the Eagles did. I'll be completely honest with you.
I don't think
Miles Sanders had like
fans
95 yards, scrimmage
right.
yards, and other than that, I have no idea what they did.
Yeah.
Carson Wentz considered day-to-day with a bruised right hand. More on him in a minute. And the Colts replacing Eric Ebron on IR with an ankle injury.
And Golden Tate's in concussion protocol.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to hit the pick your six drop, and then we're going to go right back to Carson Wentz.
Pick your six.
All right, couple different topics lined up for you this one. I want to start with Carson Wentz, though, and what do you do with Carson Wentz for the next couple weeks? And then what do you do with Carson Wentz dynasty-wise right now? Because I still believe he's a top 10 dynasty quarterback, but I think it's worth discussing. Completion percentage and touchdown rate are down this year. He's got 5 straight weeks of just 1 touchdown, just 2 games this year over 300 yards. Been the quarterback 22 since week 5, 6 in danger plays, 30th in true completion. But he's got Miami, the Giants, and Washington coming up.
Wow. I mean, he's been at streamer level, I think, since mid-season. And I think you have to treat it as so. I mean, you're going to play him. I mean, he's got plus matchups. That's what you want to see.
QB 22 since week 5 is barely streamer.
Oh, no, I get that. He also played, I think, through more difficult. He
had a more difficult stretch. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, as long as you don't have, like, if you don't have Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Watson and Wilson, I guess. Winston, I guess you can put a part, of that too. You're in streamer territory, and when you're in the playoffs, it may even just be Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, and that's it. You may have to look for streamer wise, and if you're playing matchups, there's not much better in terms of that 3-game stretch. I think he's worth rostering.
I think he is too, and I think that you start him depending on the matchup. Like I didn't make a mistake sitting Carr over Dak, but I made a mistake this week not streaming somebody over Dak because I picked up the weather. So
like I picked up Baker, and it's you get me. It's in New England. It's bad weather. It's prime time. Like everything to me seemed like this is going to be a bad Dak week.
Yeah,
and Dak itself looked better than what I expected. Actually, it
was pretty terrible. It was a lack of touchdowns really that did it. I mean, he didn't look bad necessarily, but any time the offense doesn't score touchdowns, it's bad for fantasy. Touchdowns are good for fantasy. But anyway, Carson Wentz, I agree. Rest of season in Dynasty, do you try to buy low on him if you can? If you're a Wentz owner, what do you do?
In single QB, you're not going to get much for value. Especially with some of the risers like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, those younger quarterbacks that have kind of surpassed them. Even, it's hurt his value enough. In super flex leagues, if you can get them for cheap, I mean, draft picks are going to be at a all-time value high here in about 3 months. As the draft gets closer and as everyone gets super excited when rumors start coming out, when free agency has gone through and the combine shows up, those draft picks are going to be fucking insane. We've already seen it so far, and it's only going to get higher. So you may be able to get Wentz on the cheap. You may be able to get Wentz for a late 2021, and I'd be completely fine. it's always good to sniff the owner who's got him just
Well,
to see where he's at. Sniff the owner.
sniff the
Search
owner.
out the yeah. Please sniff his ass like a dog. No.
Do not walk up and just start sniffing your other fantasy owners, please.
Search out that particular owner and see, engage where he's at with when
Follow your nose.
Yeah, follow your nose like a dash hound.
The Fruit Loops guy.
Oh Jesus!
All right.
Yikes.
All right. We'll get into the year 2 wide receivers last. I wanted to take a minute as we come up on the playoffs.
That should be last. I agree completely.
To talk about prepping your rosters. So, playoff roster prep. And just some strategies you can take going into it. Now, a couple things that I say every year. One, I like to have consistent wide receivers around in case somebody gets hurt. I like to know I have a guy that I can plug in that's going to give me about a 10-point floor in full PPR or an 8 to 10-point floor in half PPR that I can just plug in there if I were to have an injury or something like that. If you're not going to find a lot of wide receiver handcuffs worth owning out there. There's a couple, like Josh Reynolds is a popular one, for example. If somebody were to get hurt in Los Angeles on some high volume teams, you might be able to snap up somebody. The other recommendation I have, as always, is handcuff your running back if the handcuff is available. And even if the handcuff's not available, if you're like a Colt situation where you have a receiving back like Nyheim Hines, if the lead back goes down, you're going to have more opportunity for that back. Oakland's a good example of this, of Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington, but whichever one's there, both having value.
Yeah, I completely agree. You have to start checking out streamable defenses, like even if you have New England, even if you have San Francisco, New England's got a cake playoff schedule, so you'll be fine there. But you have to start checking out defenses. That's the most important thing. If your league has defenses, play them. Or start to research who's got the cake schedules, who you can play in all your playoff weeks, not just 1 week or 2 weeks out. Every single playoff week, you should be scouting to see if there's a defense there that is going to be worth streaming for that week and get yourself in the correct position to maximize your defensive points potential.
I agree completely. All right. I got a rant to go on, which is directly related to my intent stare at the Monday night game. Okay. So first off, the commissioner of the league I'm about to talk about has been great and was put in a very, very tough position. So we're going to give some opinions on things that commissioners might run into, which is the reason for me bringing this up. Not to publicly blast anybody, or kind of, but not the commissioner, more so the other owner. But this is something that commissioners face, and I want to get into. So, we ran into a situation with a bit of an invalid roster, and WWRL stands for waiver wire roulette. And you've heard me talk about this league before. It's the one where there's no bench.
Yes.
So, you have to make the gamble of, do I drop a player that's maybe on bye or out with an injury, or do I take the 0 in my lineup? And you get to this point of the year, it gets real interesting with some of those decisions you have to make, especially for fringe playoff teams. So, I am a fringe playoff team going up against a guy whose record I honestly don't know. I don't care. It's not my job to worry about his record. It's more of my job to just, kind of try to win right now. Yep. And he had Patrick Mahomes, who's on bye. But he also had Baker Mayfield, which is it's an invalid roster setup. You can't tell Sleeper not to allow that, but the whole point of the league and the whole rule of the league is premised around the fact that there is no bench. So That's an invalid roster right there. You can't carry more than one quarterback. It's single quarterback. You can't have Patrick Mahomes, who is on bye, and Baker Mayfield both on your bench. The guy was given 4 warnings throughout the week. And again, don't want to put anybody on blast, but let's just say this particular owner might be involved with a large conference in Dallas. So that should tell you what you need to know, Dan.
Okay.
So it rhymes with Mortsmon. So Anyway, invalid roster configuration. The guy's given multiple warnings from the commissioner, from other league mates, multiple people reaching out to him. You got an invalid roster. You need to correct this.
Yeah.
The commissioner gets to before Sunday and says, all right, you haven't corrected this. Baker Mayfield's a quarterback on your bench. I'm dropping him. Cuts Baker from his roster.
Okay.
So he's paying enough attention, apparently, to go out, pick up Sam Darnold, and start Darnold, but keep Mahomes on his bench.
Ooh.
Right. So at this point, I think this is egregious cheating.
Yeah, I agree.
And so the commissioner, and this is the part I don't agree with, and again, I don't want to put him on blast, and it's like I said in a private conversation, I respect his decision, even though I don't wholeheartedly agree with it. The commissioner says that he has until the Monday night game to decide if he wants to drop Mahomes, who's on his bench, or drop Darnold from his lineup. However, my argument here is strategy-wise, and this is the reason it kind of bothers me a little bit, because strategy-wise, now he has the advantage of knowing that Sam Darnold had a great week, and that if he keeps Darnold on his roster, he's going to pick up a win, most likely.
Yeah.
That's why I'm intently watching this game. I need Cooper Kupp garbage time to make that not happen. I'm still down by 4 points.
He just got a 9-yard catch, so
I had Kupp and Ingram going still. So, my thought on that is that with egregious cheating like that, he obviously paid attention to something to pick up Sam Darnold. He was paying enough attention. I don't think in a league that is that strategy-based and that gamble-based that you should be able to make that decision after a player has gone. I don't think that he should have been given the benefit of having the hindsight of what Sam Darnold had already done that week to make a choice on which quarterback he's keeping or dropping. Now, the commissioner he didn't set a lineup before today. He had ended up costing him Patrick Mahomes out to the waiver wire. So, punishment, sure. But if I lose this week, that could be enough to keep me out of the playoffs because of an invalid lineup and somebody who, in my estimation, was blatantly cheating. Now, the commissioner did talk to me, did make the attempt to talk to him. And I pretty much said, this is my thought on it. This is my opinion on it. But go with it, whatever you want to do. So I was just curious on what your thoughts are in that situation, Dan, because that's a tough spot to be in.
Oddly enough, I had just gone through almost the same exact thing in one of my dynasty leagues with tanking. So I'm not going to get into that more so because it just adds more time to this conversation. But basically, you've warned them enough. I think what should have happened if I'm the commissioner is I'm telling him who I'm dropping if this is the case. I would have dropped Mahomes. Mahomes is on a bye week. You're going to force the hand of the player to play the guy that he picked up on his roster. He's clearly going to play Baker.
Yeah.
There's no I get it. You're trying to punish him to make sure that he plays Mahomes over the fact that he misses it.
So what he did was
enough.
Drop the guy on his bench, right? Baker was initially on his bench, and then he picked up Darnold and put Mahomes on his bench. So he got players cut from his bench twice throughout that sequence when you're not supposed to have a bench.
Exactly. So, again, for me is, if I'm the commissioner, I'm making it very well known from the beginning, if you don't drop somebody, I'm going to drop the guy on your bye week. I'm going to drop the guy that's not going to fill the roster. That way you can tell him, I'm going to drop Mahomes. You're going to keep warning him. You have a decision to make of whether or not you want to drop Baker and just leave Mahomes in. Because either way, you're forcing them to not play, to not do an invalid roster at that point.
Yeah.
He does it anyways. I would just tell him next year you're out of the league.
Yeah.
You can try to kick him out now. There's a clear intent to cheat here. And that's where the issue lies in.
Well, and it's gonna cost me a win because of it. So I'm biased in thinking that he should have been forced to drop Darnold, who he picked up when he already had an illegal roster. I think that the move should have been either you drop the player on bye on Friday before you have the hindsight of knowing anything.
Yeah.
And you have to play Baker. Or you drop what's on your bench and not in your lineup, and you have to play the lineup set. Because in this league, invalid lineups are kind of like with players on bye week, or kind of an expectation, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because you don't know if given the choice, if he's going to say, no, I don't want to drop Mahomes to waivers, he's worth it to me to keep through this, or not. He was trying to pull one over is what he was trying to do, I think.
He was, yeah, and that was very clear when he picked up Darnold after,
and still didn't fix the roster.
Exactly. Like, I understand if you don't, like I said, the communication would be based on what the commissioner told him. If the commissioner just said, I'm going to drop a player from your roster to make this happen, then sure, then you can go, with it as you will. My issue is that, there's obviously clear intent to cheat here. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you can say, I'm going to kick you out of the league now, and that's the end of it, or you can wait till next year when it probably wouldn't even matter.
No, I just wanted him to have to take the L for blatantly cheating. That was my biggest thing. I
would have loved for him to lose, and I think if there was a way to drop Darnold and him lose those points, I think that would be the correct call.
And he might still lose with what I mean. The game isn't over yet. I do have Cooper Kupp, who just missed catching a bomb.
Like 6 for 38 or something like that, I think I saw.
Yeah, I do have Cooper Kupp still. So, but this game's about over, and as it stands, I'm probably going to lose by 2 points.
Well, they just converted on 4th down, so they're still on offense.
Anyway, enough about that. I just wanted to put that out there because that is a tough spot. And again, I have no issues with what the commissioner of this league did. I have a major issue with what the other gentleman, which is a term I use loosely, decided to do. And if that's how you handle your leagues, I can only imagine that that's why you got a conference where you've got people selling roofs and hot tubs that's supposed to be sports-centric. And that's all I'll say about that. All right. It also why, nobody in the Twitterverse was happy about that thing last year. So anyway, hope he fails. Anyway, moving on, something happier and really more cool to look into, your 2 wide receivers. So you set this up. I'll let you take this segment away and frame it up however you want to. I got some stats on some guys on this wide receiver class that was supposed to, quote, not be very good. And boy, was everybody wrong about that.
So I want to start by saying this. There is a Twitter conversation. I can't forget who brought it up. I want to say, I think it was Peter Howard and somebody else brought up the fact that the whole thing is that it takes receivers 3 years to finally develop, or 3 years to do that, do this, that, and the other. We have to give receiver 3 years, whatever. What we see now, and I think he said it since 2000, that the year 2 is a breakout year more so than anything else of what we've seen so far. And I found it interesting to go back and look and say, hey, let's see how this is right now. And the 2018 receiver class that we've seen so far has kind of gone in the way that we expected, outside of a couple people. So I want to talk about it. I want to see what your thoughts are on their dynasty value. This is more so for dynasty because redraft, we pretty much know you can't trade for these players because majority of redraft leagues, the trade deadline has already passed. And I think at this time of the year where dynasty leagues are really ramping up for the playoff run, and most of them still have their trade deadline going like mine does. I kind of want to see where your thoughts are. I did forget Christian Kirk. We will bring him up. He's the other dominant year 2 guy, so I'm glad that you have stats on him.
Yeah.
But the first guy I'm bringing up is the guy that everyone's been talking about, especially lately, because if I'm dominant he's been in this 4 or 5 game stretch that he's on. That's DJ Moore. As it stands right now, 103 targets, 68 catches, 905 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I knew it. I think everybody knew it, that the touchdown regression in that positive way was going to come back, just given his role in the offense. Right now, he's on pace for 100 catches, about 1,300 yards, and 150-ish targets. He's going to finish likely as a top 12 receiver or wide receiver 1. He's top 10 in catches and targets and target shares. And with the touchdowns finally happening, we should see that come to fruition. So the biggest question is he a must target in the offseason? Like, is he somebody that you're going to go out there and make a valiant attempt to trade for?
It depends on how high the price is. I mean, the thing with a lot of these guys, they're second-year wide receivers. So whether you're rebuilding, as long as you're not void of draft picks or competing, these are guys that are valuable in either sense of that.
Yep.
Of where your team's at. And there are some things about DJ Moore that scare me a little bit, and there are some things that I really, really like. So, first off, we know Ron Rivera has never, in the Panthers, have never really been the type to invest heavily in wide receiver. So, it's likely DJ Moore is going to continue to be the one and continue to see volume. You don't have to worry about another receiver coming in and then having to see mass volume split between that receiver and DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey or target regression. Now, contested catch rate, not necessarily fantastic. Actually, I lied. He's second contested catch rate.
Say he's number
that
2 in
part's
the
good
league right now.
Yeah, he's top 20 in true catch and top 10 in yards after the catch. It's separation that's not great. But
sure,
he is making contested catches, which what that tells me is there is more touchdown upside to DJ Moore. If I can trade for him, I'm going to, but I think you might have to sell the farm for him. So unless I'm like a wide receiver away from competing, I don't know that I want to pay that price because it's going to be steep. Yeah. Even though he's young and very, very good, do you want to give up? You better have no holes on your team if you're going to give up the type of draft capital it would take to get him, in my opinion.
So the trade times for him is going to be in the offseason. You're not trading him midseason. A championship team is not going to move off of a wide receiver 1, and a rebuilding team will likely not move off because he's a wide receiver 1 at this moment. But that comes into where Dynasty kind of really it takes its shape over redraft. And it's like the smart ways to do it is to know when to trade a player and to know when to not trade a player. Generally, you want to trade a player when he's at his peak or max value. That way you can still shape your roster, in the right way and gain, plus on top of that. Meaning I traded Delvin Cook for Nick Chubb in 2022. It may seem egregious, but the drop off from Cook to Chubb isn't that high, and then again an extra draft pick on top. Where I'm going with this is that do you think that we've seen DJ Moore's peak value, and if that's the case, that could trigger people wanting to move off of him and get a maximum of picks and players in return.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. But DJ Moore, look, if you can trade for DJ Moore and it's a value that you think is fair to you, do it. Because he's not a guy with that contested catch rate that at least for the next 3 to 5 years that you would expect to fall off majorly.
Well, I mean, he's like Stephon Diggs in the sense where he's dominant at the catch point and he can get yards after the catch. His route running is what needs to get better, which is insane to think about because if he developed a route tree, like an insane route tree.
Because he's not separating, but if he can learn how to separate, then yeah, he's top 5 in the league.
So I wanted to bring that up for more so. Like DJ Moore was always going to be a guy that I wanted to talk about today. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how people attack now rookie receivers moving forward because this class has looked fantastic. And the next guy we're going to talk about, Courtland Sutton, is also having a very quiet breakout year because of the DJs and DJ Moore and DJ Chark, who we'll talk about here in a little bit. Yeah. So Courtland Sutton, right now, he's got 50 catches, 832 yards, and 4 touchdowns on 84 targets. His on pace is 125-ish targets, 70-ish catches, around 1,200 yards. Having a fantastic year. Again, a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot because of what the DJs have done so far, plus Christian Kirk. Is he the number 1 popular year 2 target in the offseason? Given the draft class that's coming in, the high-value draft picks, I think Sutton can be a guy that you can get for cheaper than the value that he is right now.
Yeah, him and DJ Moore have a lot of similarities. The thing that I like more about DJ Moore than Courtland Sutton is that DJ Moore, you kind of already know what the quarterback situation is. Either you get Cam Newton back, who he's been productive with, or it stays with Kyle Allen, who he's been productive with. I don't see the Panthers necessarily spending super high on a quarterback. It's a deep class. They may take somebody later is kind of a development, but Kyle Allen's shown that he can go out there and is a second-year guy and at least keep them competitive. So Courtland Sutton did inherit the wide receiver 1 duties from Emmanuel Sanders. He's on his way to his first 1,000-yard season, as Dan mentioned. Touchdowns are there. He's had massive improvements in catch rate. Like DJ Moore, he's great in contested catch rate, and there's still a ton of upside that's untapped in the route running. DJ Moore and Courtland Sutton are almost one and the same, except DJ Moore right now has a better quarterback situation. So, if Moore's my 1A, Sutton's my 1B, just because I think that the Panthers on offense are a little bit more stable than what the Broncos are.
And I think that's where you can get Sutton for cheaper. We like you just mentioned, either going to be Cam Newton, Kyle Allen, who I don't think is the answer, or a guy we loved coming out of the draft process this year, in Will Grier, who I hope we get the chance to see this year.
Mm-hmm.
The DJ Moore, a lot like I got like our DeAndre Hopkins, has looked to be able to produce with whatever quarterback he's been getting. Sutton's in the same vein. He produced with Joe Flacco. He produced now with Brett Allen. It's whether or not he'll will he produce with Drew Lock if Drew Lock gets a chance to play this year. Both teams, the Broncos are more likely to draft a quarterback this year based on where their likely draft position should be. And he's a target of mine. I want at least one or two shares of Courtland Sutton coming out of the offseason because I think he's going to be far cheaper than a guy like DJ Moore. And I think the actual potential stats there for next year may not be that far off.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I will disagree with one part of that. I don't know without seeing Drew Lock that they spend a high-end draft pick on a quarterback. I actually think that is where the Broncos land, that they may be in prime position to trade back.
That's very true. And I agree. Like in the same vein as where the Panthers are, who just spent a day 2 pick, because they both spent day 2 picks on quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Grier was the 3rd round, and then Drew Lock was 2nd round. So I do agree there that it may not matter, which is why I think they're not too far off from each other. Better offense.
Moore and Sutton are not. In Sutton, you could also make the counter argument that he has produced almost equal to DJ Moore with less.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Sutton wasn't the one there all year. You had Emmanuel Sanders there for a little bit. So,
I mean, Sutton was always produced. He produced with both, and I think he kind of put aside the whole, can he take on the number 1 job? And he has. It hasn't been pretty most weeks. He doesn't have, a competent coaching staff to get him the football consistently, or quarterback, because let's be fair, Brett Allen's fucking garbage. So I hope we get to see Drew Lock here in the near future. Moving on to the next one of our show favorites, and someone that's gotten draft buzz or not draft buzz. It's gotten buzz this year and has kind of taken off a little bit. It's Michael Gallup. Likely the number 4 guy in this, or I guess 5 guy in this draft class for what he's produced so far this year. But with how good Dallas's offense has been, they're the number 1 team outside of, probably not so much after this week, but they're still a top 3 to 5 offense moving forward. And with how good that Dak has progressed, and with him, securing himself both times single coverage because of how good Amari Cooper is Gallup a target for you in this offseason? Just given how cheap his price could end up being.
Yes, Gallup is a target for me in this offseason, given how cheap his price could be, because he's overshadowed by other people in this draft class. He's overshadowed by Amari Cooper, but he's still on pace for over 100 targets despite missing time this year. He's missed 2 games, I think. Yep. Likely going to break 1,000 yards still. Touchdown numbers are not great, but they're at least DJ Moore levels. He's top 20 in yards after the catch, yards per reception, yards per target. That 6 drops, though, is far from great, and he's not separating or really winning contested balls at the moment. So I think that Gallup is a guy that is trending the right way with with more room to improve than some of the other guys do. You don't know what's going to happen with Cooper there, but he's already showing he can produce as a 2 with Cooper there. And the price is likely to be lower than it is for any of the other 2 guys that we talked about, as you mentioned. So, yes, Michael Gallup is a guy that I absolutely want to target this offseason because I think his price point is going to be more fair than a DJ Moore or a Courtland Sutton, and there's more narrative you can spin.
Oh, easily. So, Gallup has 9 less targets, 4 less catches, 100 less yards, and 1 less touchdown than Courtland Sutton on playing in 2 less games.
Yep.
Far better offense that he's going to play in. An offense that should not change because they'll likely re-sign and extend Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper, they're going to keep Kellen Moore, who's though has gotten some hate as of late, is a far better offensive coordinator than what they've had in the past.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think he needs to be a prime candidate, and you need to capitalize on the draft class values. We have two more good players to get to. We'll do Christian Kirk, and then we'll move on to some of the not so good players that we've seen so far. We'll start with DJ Chark, who's having a massive breakout year, and why he needs to be brought up is the fact that no one predicted this. There's some people out there that were high on him, that talked about him as a potential guy, but everybody was on D.D. Westbrook. There are some Keelan Cole guys. The Brandon Chris Conley, you overpay for Nick Foles, and then Chark is the one that emerges as the number one guy here and looks to be the wide receiver 1-2-ish for the future. 91 targets, 56 catches, 834 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Is on pace, is likely will finish as another wide receiver 1, maybe high 2. Do you think we've seen his peak value? Are you afraid of the transition where the Jacksonville offense could be with the potential unknown at quarterback? Have concerns with their offense as a whole? Likely touchdown regression with the 8 touchdowns scored and an offense that's pretty mediocre. Is he someone that you're looking to sell, or is he someone that you want to try to even acquire in this offseason?
So if I own him, he's somebody that I'm probably looking to sell high. If I don't own him, then he is somebody that I am hoping that the offense just trends downward, and I can try to acquire on the cheap in the offseason because, like you mentioned, the numbers are good, but the efficiency metrics are completely so-so. He's the wide receiver 5, thanks to some huge games. Jacksonville's offense is in a state of flux. I said it earlier that I think they are one kind of wide receiver away from really opening this thing up a little bit, and a bunch of defensive pieces. So I don't know that DJ Chark projects as a long-term one. I think that he's going to be efficient and he's going to have a decent career. But I think that he could be more frustrating and not as major high upside as he's been this season.
I can see little boom bust. He is a massive deep threat that has lived off of his target yards, which is great to see, which is what you want to see, especially for redraft. You want to target the guys that are getting targeted downfield a bunch. He's 6 in total target distance, so you know that they're using him in that way. And I agree with you. I think this team will spend potentially a day 2 pick, again a day 2 pick, like they did with Chark 2 years ago, on a potential number 1 receiver guy and pair up this offense to give Foles or Minshew or anybody else the opportunity to thrive with Fournette and hopefully that revamped offensive line. I don't know what I'd do with them either. I'm a little torn on how I wanted to approach this. We weren't the highest on him coming out of the 2018 class, which is why I think he's been a surprise for most people. But enough on him. I forgot to write down Christian Kirk's stats because I forgot about him until after I got off of break.
Okay.
But he's another guy that I think that needs to be talked about because, again, he's one of the 5 very performing well receivers that we've seen so far. And an offense that nobody
there's 6.
There's 6. There probably is one more that I forgot.
Yeah, you forgot 2. I'll talk about them both if you want.
Okay.
All right.
I'll switch it over to you.
I'm going to lead in for both of these then.
Okay,
so we're going to start with Christian Kirk, as you mentioned. So like Gallup, you missed times. You missed 3 games in this case. But he's averaging 9 targets a game, which puts him behind only DJ Moore, I believe, for this class. He's also going to be on pace for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns if he were to play it a full season. Like Gallup, there's no real underlying metric that's great. He actually has less efficiency metrics that are good than Gallup. But it's a high volume, high octane offense. I think Cliff Kingsbury is going to stick around after this season. He's getting it done as the 2, and year or two and kind of taking over for the one. And he's another guy that I don't think we've realized the upside on yet. So wide receiver 31 currently on a points per game basis, he would be the wide receiver 17, which is right with the other top performers in this class. If I'm framing up Christian Kirk somewhere, he's a guy that I think the value's probably come down on since the beginning of the season.
Sure.
So he is another guy that I would want to target. I like his long-term outlook because of the type of route runner he is and the way that he's shown yak and the offense that he's in, with a first-round pick that by all accounts has been fine. That I want Christian Kirk over a guy like DJ Chark, but not as much as a Cortland Sutton or DJ Moore. He's more on par with Michael Gallup for me.
I actually want to buy more of him. They just drafted 3 receivers this past year. I don't know if they'll draft another guy. They may take another shot. It just depends on how they feel about guys like Keyshawn Johnson and Hakeem Butler and then Andy Isabella. I agree that Kingsbury is going to get likely another chance for this year, which means the most plays ran on offense again, which just means he may not get efficient targets, but he'll get targets, is what you want to see. You hope that the touchdowns can regress positively, but we expect, year 2 Kyler Murray to take the next step forward again, and then this offense to produce more and more, even with better defenses in the NFC West. I would take Kirk probably over both Sutton and Gallup because of that. Maybe not so much Gallup. It just depends how I feel about it. But Kurt likely is going to cost right around the same as Sutton, though, just because of how high his name value was. People still like the fact that he should be the number one in Arizona coming out of the 2020 draft and offseason, which means that he probably is going to cost somewhere the same around Sutton.
Yeah,
people love Christian Kirk. I don't think he's done enough less this year to change that.
Yeah, I want Sutton more than Kirk,
which is fair. Like, they're not that far off from me.
I probably want Kirk a little more than Gallup.
I lean Kirk more because of the offense.
Yes, exactly.
Which is the only reason why that I take Kirk over Sutton. Like Sutton, Kurt, and Gallup are all within the same. Gallup gets overlooked because he's not the number one, but people often forget that with how good Dallas has looked this year, they should have or could have 2 top 20 on a points per game basis receivers.
Yep.
That being Cooper and Gallup.
Yep. All right. So the other guy from this draft class that is definitely belongs in this conversation with the top guys that you didn't list is Calvin Ridley.
Oh, fuck. Yes, you're right.
Absolutely. He's on pace for 113 targets after a 92 target season last year. He's on pace to clear 1,000 yards. It's likely going to equal his 10 touchdown season, so no regression there, even though I think we can all agree that Matt Ryan, the Falcons' offense has regressed. They traded Mohamed Sanu, and Ridley's route running translated, and these are the numbers that I like to see for a guy that's going to be a long-term success, especially with Julio aging. 10th in target separation with a low drop rate. Guys that can separate through their route running last longer in this league than guys that rely purely on their athleticism and never adapt to that. And he's shown that at a very young age, which was his game in college. As a wide receiver 17 this year, give him 2 top 20 seasons. Calvin Ridley is a guy that I think is flying very kind of under the radar right now, given how kind of up and down he can be sometimes. But he's one that I would slap right up there with Cortland Sutton and DJ Moore in conversation. Now, he might not be the one in Atlanta next year or the year after, but I do think that you eventually see that type of transition like you saw from Roddy White to Julio Jones.
I don't know if Ridley's ever the true number one. He doesn't. I mean, he's got. It's tough. The fact is, you can't find there might not be another Julio. Just based on his athletics and everything else, he's a one of a kind.
I'm not saying that he's going to equal Julio's production or anything, or he's going to be Julio Jones. Yeah. But that kind of succession planning, if you will.
Sure.
I mean, Roddy White wasn't Julio. Julio's better.
Oh no, of course. For what's a bit concerning for me is the is the trending downwards of this offense. I wanted to see what they look like for next year. Like this offense looks so good coming out of here with Austin Hooper, potentially, with his breakout last year, Calvin Ridley doing, 10 touchdowns looked great last year. Matt Ryan, whatever. I'm a little concerned that this offense is on the downhill trend, but given again draft class value or draft pick value, you could get Ridley for kind of cheap. I would think, especially because he hasn't really, he's had one game over 10 targets in this whole season. It's kind of been the same player as last year, except he hasn't had those massive touchdown breakout games that he had in his rookie season. It's fallen off to kind of where we expect it to be, in that 5 to 7 range, and you hope that he can continue to get enough target volume. He would be my number 6 receiver that I'm targeting in this class, because I still think people are going to be relatively high on him, just given his draft capital from the actual draft class and the expected, I guess, positive regression from the Falcons offense. Yeah. Because I think people will see it from that way. I'm not so much on that train yet.
So, couple things with what you just said. As normal, he's had one game over 10 targets, one game at 10 targets, but all games but one over 5. So that's good. You threw out the 6 to 8 touchdown, or the, what was it, 5 to 8, 5 to 7, something like that. I don't know. He's already at 6. He's already at 6.
Yeah.
So he's at 6 with 5 games left in the season. So he could potentially end up equaling that 10 touchdown mark. I'd expect him to be, at least 8 or more. I mean, I don't think he goes to 4 games, 5 games, and only catches one other touchdown. He's at a 2-game stretch and a 3-game stretch, but he's also done touchdowns in back-to-back weeks 3 different times this year. It's New Orleans and Carolina coming up, and then a rough matchup against San Francisco. But, he looks like he's going to outpace what he did last year. Target-wise, reception-wise, definitely reception-wise.
Yeah.
Target-wise, yard-wise, and probably be about the same touchdown-wise. So the other thing I'll say about Ridley is you mentioned the downturning offense. Okay, yeah, it is a downtrending offense, and I mentioned the stability I think Carolina has. But you look at some other guys we're talking about, I think we can agree that Gallup's is in a pretty good offense. Kirk's is on the way up. But Cortland Sutton's the other guy I would compare that to. You got one offense trending down and one offense that's kind of rock bottom. And, Calvin Ridley and Cortland Sutton are a lot of the same in a sense of where the offenses haven't been great and they're both still producing. But Ridley's doing it with Julio Jones there.
That's fair. Right. Like he's doing it on less target volume. Will actually be right about the same.
Yeah, it's about the same
because the Falcons have to pass more.
They're throwing a lot.
Yeah. Things that aren't shocking when a team doesn't have a great defense for the majority part of the season and are always losing. Also, it's just more so less. It's not that I hate Calvin Ridley. Mm-hmm. It's just I have my concerns, and it's not high concerns. I would gladly trade a mid 2020 for him and be fine with it. I don't know if I give up a first, but it'd be one of those things where it's always going to be value based on what I can get for him.
Yep. So I can't find our consensus rankings on those 6 before we move on to some other people, but my rankings, which I know we're close to your guys's, but for this rookie class coming in at wide receiver, by the way, DJ Moore was the 1, Cortland Sutton was my 2, Michael Gallup was my 3. Unironically, those are the first 3 you read off.
Yep.
Christian Kirk was my 4, and Calvin Ridley was my 6, and DJ Chark my 11. So, and I know that we were close on just about all of these. So, we did pretty good hit rate there.
Yeah. So, it was Gallup. It was more Gallup, Sutton, Kurt, Ridley, Obviously missed on Miller. We'll talk about him in a second. I mean,
I don't know if that's so
Shark-
much of a miss. We'll get to that though.
yeah, we got we're relatively the same, but we'll move on from Ridley. We'll get to some of the two most disappointing guys. There are some guys left off of here because we can't spend this much time on two guys.
There's a couple that I'll run through after these
Yeah.
two that we're going to talk about also.
So we talked about Miller. I did put Miller down because he was one of the more sought after kind of, I want to trade for him. He has 7 touchdowns, I think, in his first year or his rookie year. Expected Bears offense to take the next step. People love Trubisky. I was high on that train as well. Year 2 with Matt Nagy, blah, blah, blah. And it's been bad. 50 targets, 29 catches, 349 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns. We all expected regression from that standpoint. Not this hard. But he's had 20 targets the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
Better matchups. He's healthy, which is what we want to see. I have been a massive Miller fan. I love Anthony Miller. I compared him to Steve Smith because of the aggression that he has when he's on the field. And I want to see him healthy, and I want to continue to see him do better. But with how the Bears offense is looked, it wouldn't shock me. I know that you're a Bears fan, so I may be completely wrong. It wouldn't shock me if they decide to double down on Trubisky and draft another highly sought after playmaker, whether that be a receiver or tight end, even though this isn't a great tight end class, thus pushing down Miller again. So what are your thoughts on Miller coming into this offseason and then to the draft as a Bears fan?
So my thoughts on Miller are that I want to trade for Anthony Miller. And it's kind of because of what you said. The 20 targets over 2 weeks is good. I want to see that continue. He did play most of last season with a dislocated shoulder, although he showed what he could do in the red zone. And I don't think that the issue here has to do so much with Anthony Miller as a player, so much as it has to do with just the way the offense has gone. Bears lead the league in 3 and outs. We saw last week in a plus matchup, the offense perform a bit better. Anthony Miller was targeted. We saw the week before in that kind of nasty matchup with the Rams, Anthony Miller was getting targeted. And I think that that's part of something that they're going to try to do down the stretch here is continuing to target Anthony Miller and trying to make him a reliable third down option. And if that continues, he's a guy that I'm looking at as a potential breakout. Now, do the Bears double down on a wide receiver? Sure. They might double down on a wide receiver. How much does that push Miller down? Well, I'm looking at Allen Robinson's deal right now.
Yep.
They got an opt-out this year for only $2 million in dead cap, and he's a UFA after next season. If you're playing the long game or you're a rebuilding team or even a fringe team, I'm going to gamble on Anthony Miller. Maybe not right this second. Don't go out and trade for him next week, but when you get into the offseason, if this trend continues where he is seeing target volume and is building that rapport, I'm going to say you go out and you trade for Anthony Miller because the price is going to be dirt cheap because he hasn't lived up to the hype. But the outlook, it's going to be stock up, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can get him at a fair value and get either a decent ROI for that, or if you have to cut bait, you're getting him at a value to where I don't think you feel terrible about that.
I mean, for me, is he might be free. You have your rookie drafts. You obviously have your roster cut downs. Most people will look at that, especially with the draft class coming up. They may drop him. Same with the next guy that I'll talk about, and then I'm sure with whatever guy you have coming up deck too, is that a not so loved draft class now coming up with a draft class that everybody loves coming into this year at both running back and receiver. There's limited roster spots. So if you're an Anthony Miller truther, you may not have to give up any draft picks for him or player. You may be able to just get him for free.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm willing to take that shot. I wanted to bring him up because he gets talked about a bunch. He's been forgotten because of how bad this offense has looked. But I think if Nagy's going to let Trubisky kind of work through his issues by having him throw the ball a shit ton more, that's only going to be good for Anthony Miller. He may not get high quality targets, but again, Like with Christian Kirk, you may not need efficient targets. You just need targets to to at least have a base floor.
Yep. And looking at that contract again, the Bears save $13 million if they cut Robinson. You could draft somebody this year and say, "Hey, we're going to save $13 million." They may trade them.
Yeah,
if they can.
They may find somebody like I'm not going to get into it now. That's something that we'll do in the offseason. But
a fringe competing team that needs a wide receiver might take that on a 1-year deal.
God, you may see New England.
Yep.
Like they're again, they're going to keep probably drafting or trading for receivers.
Bears need draft picks.
Yeah.
So
we'll move on to my last guy.
Okay.
That's Dante Pettis, because he needs to be talked about. He is the biggest disappointment from this draft class, at least in year 2. I don't think there's a player that was so hyped from everybody that has dropped out so far. Like, people who hated him didn't expect this.
Mm-hmm.
Just 24 targets, 11 catches, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the year. He, like, if there's going to be a guy that's going to get cut during roster cutdowns, it's going to probably be Pettis. You're higher on him than I was, especially now. Do you still feel the same about it? Like, is he someone that you are going to target just in case? Because the Niners, I don't think have figured out what their receiving core is going to be. I think they're just drafting players of like-minded skill sets and hoping 1 and 6. Are you going to take a flyer on Pettis? Is my question.
That one's tough. I don't know if I want to take a flyer on Pettis as long as he's in San Francisco, because him and Kyle Shanahan are, for whatever reason, not on the same page and have not been. Like, I don't know what's gone on in practices or whatever, but I mean, Shanahan hasn't even put him on the field this season, let alone giving him much of a chance. So, I do not know how much I want to stake in Dante Pettis as long as he's in San Francisco. I think Jimmy Garoppolo has been underwhelming, despite how good the Niners' defense has been. They've utilized the running game. George Kittle has the target volume there, and Deebo Samuel, I think right now, has good sticking power.
Yep.
So, I do not want anything to do with Pettis in San Francisco. Now, in my mind, he's a guy that you cut that if they do decide to cut him, which there's really no harm in them doing right now. If they do decide to cut him and he lands on another team where he has an opportunity, he's absolutely somebody I want.
Okay.
So maybe if you can afford to on a rebuilding team, like, I'm glad I've already got him rostered in your league, because he'll land on a second team and the hype will go through the roof. You're going to have a sell window on Dante Pettis at some point.
I mean, like, for me, I wouldn't be shocked if San Fran trades them. I mean, they drafted 2-3 receivers this year. Samuel, Hurts, and maybe somebody else. They'll probably draft one this year because that's their motto. Probably day 2, second round again for a third year in a row. It wouldn't shock me if the Niners lock up a first round by week 16 or 17, or by week 16, that Pettis gets a shit ton of playing time, looks good because he's a good player, and then they move on from him. Like that I'm building a narrative here. That wouldn't shock me if that happens there, because there's talent there. We like him. There's a reason why he was so hyped coming.
There's a reason he produced last year.
Yeah, like, I get it that it wasn't with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they drafted a guy that's very similar to him in Deebo Samuel.
That was always my worry, though. If you listened it all over the offseason, you know that not you particularly, but listeners.
Well, I know.
You know that was my worry in the one scenario where I felt like it wasn't going to stick. So.
All right. That's all I got for Pettis.
All
Who
right.
are your other 2 guys?
All right. I got a couple I just want to run through real quick. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them. 2 guys I want to highlight, though. And then 4 others I just want to give kind of kudos for staying on a team so far.
Okay.
All right. So first off, Auden Tate. He's earned an opportunity thanks to injuries with lackluster talent around him. He's done all right given the quarterback play. He's on pace for around 100 targets and just under 800 yards and a couple of touchdowns.
Shit, really?
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah. His underlying numbers are no better or worse than that of a James Washington or even a Michael Gallup, although the tape and the athletic profile say that those two are going to, Washington and Gallup, to just probably going to stand up and have better careers. But Auden Tate is actually, given the opportunity, done enough to at least hang around for a little bit. I don't know that he's ever going to be or really ever see this target volume again, because the Bengals definitely need to address wide receiver. Especially if AJ Green walks. But yeah, overall, he's done all right. I guess there are three guys I wanted to highlight real quick. James Washington's another one that was out of this draft class I wanted to talk about. We had some major questions about how his game would translate at the NFL level, given his body positioning and his inability to separate. Well, the quarterback play, again, with the injury to Ben, hasn't been great. He's still going to see about 80 targets, 50 receptions, 18 yards of reception, so he's still beating guys deep. He's had improved his catch rate over year one, and his contested catch rate is 62.5%, which is impressive. So, James Washington, I think, will be a guy that we're talking about as kind of a fringe week-to-week value guy for the rest of his career. And the other guy I wanted to give some props to, that has bounced around, but seems to have found at least a little sticking power, is Allen Lazard. He was... He was better. He played over Hakeem Butler at Iowa, and the Packers stashed him on the practice squad for a little bit. And given Geronimo Allison got his chance and hasn't produced, the Scantling has had the chance and hasn't produced. We've barely seen anything of St. Brown. The receiving corps has been in shambles, and Lazard, not against San Francisco, but before that, we were seeing him kind of get out onto the field more, and he has some obvious rapport with Rodgers. He's got the catch rate to show for it, but 60% contested catch rate for a big body guy. He's 39th in separation, which could be a lot worse for someone of his size, and really athletic profile for that matter. But all of the target quality ratings are good. He's tops in the league in target quality and catchable target rate. So him and Rodgers are meshing, and I think that if the Packers are going to get right, Allen Lazard's going to have to be part of that.
Yeah. I'm going to give quick thoughts on all three.
Yeah.
Is that all you had about Lazard, too?
Yeah, Lazard, Tate, and Washington were the other three that were having kind of fringe seasons and flashing a little bit that I think you could look at in year three, along with Miller.
Okay. So for Auden Tate, the fact that Cincinnati's in a full rebuild, and I think that includes the entire offense besides Mixon, I wouldn't invest in Tate. I would actually move on from Tate. This is probably peak value for him if I can. Like, I'll take a third round 2020 for him, because I think they'll overhaul this receiving core as much as they can. Sands from Tyler Boyd and maybe John Ross. I think that could hurt Tate there. Washington, I have no issue trying to buy. We've seen Pittsburgh develop receivers time and time again. And while they just spent a third round pick on Deontay Johnson, I think their receiving core of Juju Johnson in Washington is not a bad receiving core to have, to be completely honest. And Big Ben's probably won't retire coming into the 2020 season. And for Lazard, I fully expect Green Bay to address the receiver position at least in day 2, if not day 1, which could put him down. But we've seen receivers that have built chemistry with Rodgers and that trust with Rodgers shine through and through. So I'd be willing to take a shot on Lazard if I had.
He's free most places. So.
He'll be free. I assume most people have picked him up in their leagues, and again, will be likely part of these roster cuts from these teams. Again, you don't have to spend you can maybe spend a 2024 if he's been picked up already. And that's all people want. They just want a draft pick. So
yep. All right, 4 other guys from this draft class that have stuck on one team. We'll do a beer review. We'll check some boxes, and we'll call it good. These are congratulations, you didn't get cut, guys. We already talked about Dante Pettis. So, Deshaun Hamilton.
Right.
Yeah, who we all thought was going to break out this year, and boy, is that not panned out. He's been He's been hurt on and off, but that has not gone well. Traquan Smith, another guy you loved, that it has not panned out this year.
He'll get cut, I think.
Yeah, and Javon Wims is the other one. Wims has actually been seen on the field in a Bears uniform. So there you go. Those are the other 4 guys that have not been cut yet from this draft class. I'm
God
sure
damn
there's
it,
more.
Traquan. I believe in you.
I'm sure there's more, but that's
There's a lot more.
what we're going with. Actually, while we're on the subject, real quick,
ESB. Congratulations for being on the Green Bay
Yeah.
Packers squad and probably
Jamon-
not stretching.
Jamon Moore.
Jermon Moore.
Jamon Moore.
Two guys I expect to be cut from Green Bay at some point in the offseason. Or I guess post-draft in the actual offseason.
I don't want 2019. Hold on. I want to get some names out here too before we move on, just for fun, because I'm having
Some more
fun with
shout-outs?
this right now.
Sure.
Yeah, some shout outs if I can. All right, you ready for some of these?
Let's do it.
Just looking at wide receivers. I don't even want to look at some of the other names. Just wide receivers right now. Darius Fountain, Justin Watson, neither of those guys, and Deion Kane, all guys that were in the top 20 for us that didn't pan or haven't panned for one reason or another. Antonio Callaway, cut,
Oh
idiot.
my God, Callaway.
Trey Quinn we didn't talk about, but he was on here. Jordan Lasley's in the XFL. Dylan
That's right.
Cantrell, I have no idea where he's at. That was my draft crush for a little bit.
Yeah.
Jaleel Scott, Quadri Henderson, Braxton Berrios, who we actually had a sighting of this weekend. Simi Cobbs, who thankfully stuck nowhere. Richie James, who's still hanging around in San
Fuck
Francisco.
Sammy Cobbs, by the way.
Cedric Wilson, Deontay Burnett, Marcel Aitman, Jake Weineke,
God.
Jester Way, Corey Robertson.
Oh, man.
So
Look, I will say this. If Tampa Bay does not draft a receiver, I still love Justin Watson.
yeah.
Dude, super athletic, obviously small school produce. May never be what we all want him to be, but I'm not losing hope that Watson can at least produce one relevant season.
Man, this was actually a good draft class.
If Kiki Kuti can get out of the doghouse, and in some way somehow Dante Pettis can land on
I
a
forgot
team
about
that wants to
Kuti.
use him, and
This
I
was
love
a
Trey
good
Quinn.
draft class.
it's lived up plus to the expectations. So
Just looking up and down it, I mean, I'm just clicking through what my rankings were. Like, man, you've got 4 starting quarterbacks out of it. We just talked about the wide receivers. The top 11. The top, 10 of the top 11 guys we had for running back have consistent jobs right now on our fantasy relevant, with a couple more down the line.
God, this was
And
bad. Josh Rosen has a higher grade on NFL.com
yeah,
than Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen.
3, 4,
Yikes.
and 5 tight ends with another one that's flashed. So, yeah, good draft class. Let's hit a beer review.
Beer review.
Well, that was fun, but man, we got in the weeds on that a little bit. All right, beer review. Dan, go ahead with, I don't even remember what you were drinking. Screenshot from Prairie Brewing. I must pick that one up this weekend, actually.
Screenshot, Prairie Brewing. This is a Imperial Stout with hazelnut coffee added. It drinks as it is. You get a lot of the hazelnut on the entire taste. The nose is the same. This is pretty much as advertised. If you had a lot of Imperial Stouts, to know what you're going to get from Imperial Stouts, heavy chocolate, decent amount of coffee. The hazelnut as well being added to it really sticks out. So if you like hazelnut coffee and you like Imperial Stouts or just stouts in general, I think this is a well-worthy try. At 11%, it definitely drinks less than that, and it's very, very tasty.
All right. I've got Bud Light's lime. So I will say this. It is better than when I had it 10 years ago. I had this when it first launched, and it reminded me of drinking dish soap. It does not do that anymore. Now it tastes more true to a lime beer, but it's not as heavy as the lime in some other craft beers. And I think in comparison to a Lime-A-Rita, this is actually better because Lime-A-Ritas are trash. But
Yes, they are.
yeah, overall, you just get a kind of a moderate lime all the way through the drink. It doesn't finish too tart or acidic-y. Kind of got that Bud Light clean and crisp finish. So, yeah, there's a legitimate review of Bud Light Lime. Weirdly, I'm gonna say it. One of my more favorite lime beers, which is like, I don't know. I don't even know what comparison. It's like being my favorite player on the Packers. So there you go.
There you go.
All right, let's go ahead and beer goggle this thing. We've got
Check some boxes.
Shorter list than we normally would, but yeah, let's check some boxes.
Beer goggles.
All right, I'll start. We'll interleave you in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and start with Bo Scarborough for the Lions. He had some touches last week. I think he had 18 was the number. Yeah, 18 carries, 98 yards, 5.4 yards per clip. Matchups aren't fantastic rest of the season. He's got Chicago, which has been kind of average here lately. Minnesota, which has been good, that's a good matchup because I haven't been able to stop. Well, your run defense is good though.
Yes.
Is very good. So I think Chicago, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, that is not a great stretch of games, but the volume should be there at least. He's going to have the chance to fall in for a touchdown. So if you need flex value or just a guy on your bench that should have at least some volume rest of season, Bo Scarborough's out there at about 49% owned. You got another guy. You got a guy now, another back that's making a little bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, Rashad Penny, 28.6% owned, season high in snaps and yards. This past week, we've clearly seen the potential outs of Chris Carson with more fumble concerns and inefficient running. Pete Carroll has also leaned towards the RBBC. And again, like Bo Scarborough, Penny has a not so great schedule down the stretch in Minnesota, Rams, Panthers, and then finishing up at the Cardinals, which would not be the worst matchup in the world. But on an offense that knows how to use their weapons, Penny could find a way to some flex value. He needs to be picked up, especially for the Chris Carson owner. Just be prepared for some headaches trying to figure out who to play.
Yep, I have finally decided that I hate Kalen Ballage more than I hate Rashad Penny.
I mean, I would hope so.
There's that.
Yes.
All right. My next pickup is going to be Anthony Miller. We talked about him earlier at length. We dropped this nugget earlier too, but 20 targets, 12 receptions, 131 yards over the last 2 weeks. He's got Detroit, Dallas, and Green Bay on the horizon. All of those are good receiver matchups as long as he can continue to get volume. Offensive narrative, you did see the Bears playing less scared this past week, even though Trubisky threw 2 picks, both of which I think were kind of hardly his fault. I think both of those were popped up into the air by Bears receivers.
I think they were.
So, overall, they were playing less scared, forcing the ball down the field more. Trubisky was running more. I think that the offense is starting to turn a corner, but part of that has been getting Anthony Miller more involved on the intermediate routes and over the middle of the field. So, I talked about having a guy that is going to get volume around that you may not start, but is good insurance. Anthony Miller fits that mold. Again, with plus matchups coming up.
Mine,
another
last
one
one
that fits
is
the mold.
Last one is Deebo Samuel. I added this one in late, so I don't have any notes written down, but he's clearly taken over the number 1 spot, or at least number 2, depending on where you want to put Sanders in this location. Last 3 weeks, he's either had 10 plus targets or a touchdown. Thankfully, the touchdown last night saved his week, but 11 targets, 10 targets against Seattle and Arizona. His next matchups, what makes this juicier is teams that can push the pace and make San Francisco throw more than run. Baltimore, at New Orleans, and then at home against the Falcons and the Rams.
That Baltimore game is going to be good.
Fantastic. That should be the game of the season, I think, so far, what we've seen. Looking at where Deebo can get those volume, that's where you want to look at is every matchup for the rest of the year. The offense is good enough to push pace and make the Niners throw more. And I think that's where you're going to land on. Deebo Samuel needs to be picked up and owned everywhere. 42.7% owned at this moment. I think he's taken that spot over Sanders. I think Sanders is I think it'll be 1A, 1B. But Debo is good enough, especially after the catch and how tough he is in the middle, that he should be rostered and should be played. Flex value at worst, in my opinion.
Last 4 weeks, 30 targets, 22 receptions, 336 yards, and a touchdown. So
yeah, we'll take it.
He's been pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. My last pickup's going to be Ryan Griffin, another guy that has either done it with touchdowns or with consistency. At over 50 yards in 3 of his last 5 games. He's got 1 touchdown each of the last 2 weeks. Cincinnati and Miami the next 2 weeks. So, good matchups for Ryan Griffin. No Chris Herndon. Only 25% owned. So if you're streaming tight ends, he's one you can pick up and use for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I love this call. He's being used.
Yep.
And it's what we want to see from tight ends.
All right, looking at cuts. Phillip Rivers is my first cut. 46.4% owned. He's at 15.1. Sorry. Or fewer points each of the last 4 weeks. 5 of his last 6 games also have been under that mark. Just 4 20-plus point performances on the season. It's Denver next week. You can stream and replace him. Phillip Rivers is not doing anybody a whole lot of good right now.
Yeah, he needs to not be rostered.
All right, you got Royce Freeman.
Royce, so kind of taking a dip here as we look to the cuts here. If you have Phillip Lindsay, then I think you should, if Royce gets dropped, you should pick him up for the handcuff sake. But it looks like Denver has moved into more of that Phillip Lindsay territory. Royce hasn't seen double-digit carries since week 8. His targets have dipped since Brad Allen has taken over, and he's kind of lost that flex value that he had throughout most of the season. To me, it looks like Denver is on its way out from Royce, and it's decided to ride Lindsay, who I think has seen 10-plus carries at the very least throughout the season. Again, there's no reason to roster him unless you're the Phillip Lindsay owner.
Agreed. All right, a guy that there's no reason to roster, just period, because he's under the threshold for what we'd normally put on a cut, but screw it. Kalen Ballage, somehow 32% owned. Get rid of him.
If he's still the starter, then fuck it. But
I just want to have some fun with this real quick.
We just want to hit on him. That's great.
No, I do want to hit on him. 1.9 yards per attempt.
So bad.
12.3 yards per game.
He
has caught 14 balls for 63 yards and no touchdowns. And he's just been bad.
Some of his vision's good enough to catch passes, but not run through holes.
Yep, he has had 1 game over 20 yards this season on the ground. That was his 20 for 43 game against Miami or against Indianapolis.
Yes,
carried 20 times for 43 yards. He has had no games over 13 receiving yards.
My favorite highlight of him is this past week when they threw him the pass and he ducked his head because he wasn't expecting it. Yeah, that happened. They threw him a check down and he ducked his head because he was not expecting a pass. That's where Kalen Ballage is. Like, so much athletic, like, upside to him, but holy fuck, he's like the Darrell Green Beckham of running backs.
Can you say Kalen Ballage for me again?
Kalen Ballage.
Anyway, that's the show. For Kalen Ballage, Christian Kirk, year 2 wide receivers, Brandon Allen, not shitty commissioners. Sorry, that was not what I meant to say at all. Shitty league mates. And I don't even know.
And things
and stuff. I'm at Hot BFF with 2 P's. We are at Beerfield FF. He is at 30 BFF. Beerfield Fantasy Football, Twitter, YouTube, all that fun shit. We'll be here on Wednesday to check some boxes, getting ready for Turkey Day, and the last week of most everybody's fantasy regular season.
Gobble, gobble, bitches.
Gobble, gobble,